Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel Fanfiction podcast. Today we will continue our journey of What If Orario Went to War Against the One-Eyed Black Dragon Part 7. Before we start, please like, share, subscribe and comment in the comment section. Sweeney Aishimesu, chapter summary. Slow burn, until it isn't the chapter, but with more to come, I'm sure. Chapter notes, see the end of the chapter for notes. Familia Oratoria Adamichi Fanfiction, chapter 46. Sweeney Aishimesu, what galvanized Haruheim was. Well, it was many things. After his return and since then from the deep expedition to the 100th floor of the dungeon, Belle became more and more gallant. Charming, handsome, bold, and a million other things to her eyes. She had never been short of daydreams about her and the captain, before, but now her mind was flooded with fantasies. To the point she couldn't stand it, she finally implored Aisha, her only source, for assistance. She was confident enough that she wouldn't faint from trying to seduce Belle. The only problem was that she didn't know how. Well, she also didn't know what to do after the seducing either. Aisha was more than happy to help, train her, of course. Still, she didn't feel herself courageous enough to try and put any of it into action. That was until one night. After returning to Lord Takamikazuchi's familia, Mikoto still came over either alone or with some of her familia as guests. Often, she came with the intent also to partake in their onsen-style baths, with Hestia's blessing. She and Haruheim still bathed together almost as often as when Mikoto was in their familia. It was one such night that her friend visited alone to share the bath with her. The level 4 had needed to wait until late in order to see to her duties before coming, so they took their bath much later. On their way in, they heard extremely quiet murmurs coming from the men's bath, and made themselves inconspicuous against the wall. They were unsure if it was intruders or something else, but they couldn't be too careful. Surprise colored their faces when Mr. Aiden emerged from the bath clad loosely in a robe, followed by Miss Althea. Seeing the pair, both girls covered their mouth in shock, staying silent as the man cupped Althea's chin with his hand, tilting her head up with his thumb as his palm brushed to hold her neck, and they kissed. Breaking the intimate gesture after a moment, he drifted his head to the side of hers so that his mouth breathed some words they couldn't hear into her ear, but well past her field of vision. He glanced in their direction. Freezing, they watched as he held a finger to his lips quickly, before looking away again and languidly leading the lady away from them, grasping her by the waist as she quietly giggled in the silent hallway. While the followed bath had been made somewhat awkward for Mikoto, who chose not to bring up the encounter at all, for Haruheim it was something of a revelation. Something clicked in her mind that night. Belle was a wonderful man, no less than Mr. Aiden. The fact that he had many admirers was not lost on her, it never was. She had never assumed to have any place before them by his side. Yet she couldn't deny her feelings. She would never do that to herself again, not after he saved her. Whether she deserved to be by his side wasn't for her to choose. It was for him to decide. If not her, then surely someone would be next to him, and probably soon, too. That meant if she wanted to be true to herself, and she desperately did, then she had to be clear and honest with him. So that was how she found herself waiting for Belle in his room, as prepared as she could possibly be, after he returned with Rai from his first venture into the dungeon. Her breath caught as she heard footsteps approach, and the door opened, revealing Belle to her as she stood from his bed. She cleared her throat. "Belle, would you please listen? I have something very important to say and ask." She stopped after Belle closed the door and held up a hand, confused. She didn't realize what was happening until the transformation was undone, and Lily stood with her in the room. "Sorry, Haruheim." Lily was just being cautious. "I see, but why are you here, Miss Lily?" "The same reason as you," she gasped. Lily isn't blind, and she feels the same as Haruheim. Still, she couldn't go to Belle before you, not when you held such strong feelings so clearly. "Oh, Lily, I'm so sorry, I was only thinking of myself and you." Lily shook her head. No, Lily knows that she doesn't always show her feelings. Well, and it might have looked like she didn't feel like she really does. Lily doesn't blame you, so then, this must mean you want to ask him together, and let him decide? Ask me what? As Lily was about to nod, Belle walked in, quirking a brow at the pair as they froze up. Well. I'm all ears, you guys. Then it came out, all at once. Each poured out their feelings to him, neither speaking over the other, taking turns to tell him a bit at a time. It tumbled out of them in such a rush that neither could really remember nor realize what they were saying precisely, only hoping that their feelings got across to the man in front of them. They did. Belle was struck in realization that he was, well, still foolish, just in a different way than when he dealt with the Xenos situation, on the surface. His mind flashed to numerous conversations he had shared with Welf, and then to Aiden, Belisarius, his aunt, and a few others about the topic of romantic love. His mind had always been on A's those times, with a hefty amount of consideration focused on Ryu, too. He had never imagined others would be harboring feelings for him. As he reflected on those conversations, he realized something else. He needed to make a decision. These girls, his great friends, his familia, were waiting on his response to their heartfelt feelings. They bared their souls to him. Not making them wait another moment, he made his decision. Reaching behind him, he closed his bedroom door and locked it. The next morning, the three awoke a bit late. And all in his bed, and none wearing any clothes. Belle stirred first from the middle, his actions rousing the other two. HM? Did last night actually happen? Lily Whisper shouted. It wasn't another dream. She looked at Belle and Haruheim's bare chests, and looked down blushing. Oh. Haruheim herself seemed to catch up to the morning, and smiled brightly. Waking up like this is wonderful, Belle. Lily, we should do this often. Belle smiled, nodding. You're right, but for now, we should hurry and get some breakfast. I dunno about you two, but I'm starving. The tension broke as they laughed together, moving to get dressed without a hint of shame between them. Each comfortable in their feelings being understood and shared, they all made their way to the dining hall. In hindsight, they were quite lucky. By the time they made it to breakfast, it was late enough that most of their guests and familia members had already cleared out, only the goddesses staying with them and Hestia, as well as Aiden, Althea, Belisarius, and Welf were still there when the three made it to get their own food. There were a few different reactions to their entrance, but mostly amusement, joy, some jealousy from Hestia, and consternation from Althea. Damn, not even trying to be subtle, Callie laughed. Then again, after last night I guess that's to be expected. Still not catching on, the three looked around confused for a moment before Lily went stiff, her face turning tomato red at an alarming rate. What is it? Goddess? Belle asked, still slow to the atmosphere of the room. Hestia, with eyes tearing up slightly, made a show of shouting at him. Belle, you traitor! I can't believe you, perv, womanizer, enemy of women everywhere. How could you? Would ye, goddess? Ease up, Hestia. Hecate chuckled. He's a healthy young man, what did you expect? Indeed, though to be sure it is a bit surprising, Bera muttered. Athena just stared at the three while Aiden laughed aloud, holding out his hand for Welf to grudgingly place a hefty stack of Valis into. The man squeezed Althea's shoulder, and her constipated look cleared up, though she still didn't seem overly pleased. Walking up to the three, he gave them a thumbs up. Congratulations, you three, but for courtesy, you might wanna use this next time. It's a sound stone. It confines any sound within a room it is in, so that it magically soundproofs whatever room it is kept in. Still smiling ear to ear, he left, while finally Althea stood and marched toward Belisarius. This is your fault somehow. I blame you. Fearing for his life, the man left as fast as he could, Althea quick to follow. Finally, Aiden popped his head back into quip. Oh Belle, you also owe me for explaining to Rye what you three were up to last night. The whole damn mansion heard, so next time make sure to use the sound stone, alright? At last, realization dawned on Belle and Haruheim as the Renard fainted. Belle caught her as he slowly was overcome with mortification. In an instant, his eyes snapped to Hestia. Wait, goddess, I can explain. Oh, explain it, can you? I'll bet you can, you cheater. Scrap the explanation, how about a demonstration? Callie cheered, egging on the show, only to be slapped over the back of her head by Athena. You don't have to explain anything anyway, Belle. I'm sure the whole house understands your explanation without you having to say it. No, the only thing that matters now is your punishment. At last, Lily seemed to reboot and take offense at that. Why, you can't punish us for loving each other. No, that's not what I mean. I'm punishing you for disturbing the peace, very disturbing. Lily went quiet at that, muttering something about jealous virgin goddesses, only to go silent and shudder as Athena drilled her gaze into her. I thought about making you go to the dungeon in your underwear, but I think that would make the problem worse, she sighed, so I came up with this instead. You three will wear these placards for the whole day. Her word final, she presented the two since Haruheim was still out of it with 3 small planks of wood with handwriting large enough to be read from where they sat a couple of meters away. A sign for Belle read, I'm a cheating, horny rabbit that can't keep it down. A sign for each of the girls read, I love a cheating, horny rabbit, and can't keep it down. Belle and Lily gaped at the signs while Hestia puffed out her chest, angrily. After breakfast, you three will put on these signs, be tied, together with some rope halters, and walk around the city for the whole day. All of that preceded them getting dressed and donning their placards as they left Heathfire Manor. Wanting to avoid running into familiar faces, they decided to traverse to areas of Orario they didn't normally go to, and, slowly, the day began to morph into a date. An extra embarrassing one, but still a romantic outing in a sense. The trio enjoyed themselves as they walked around shops near the Academy of Orario. In all his time in the city, Belle had never been anywhere near here, but Lily was happy to show them around. Haruheim was munching on some sweets they had gotten at a vendor's stall. However, as they were about to move on, a group of figures emerged from a nearby store named the Emporium. The 3 of them froze as Lafia, Filvis, Riveria, Tiona, and Azal emerged from the store's threshold and immediately spotted them. Of course, the first thing they did was read the signs. They remained frozen as the others realized what was going on, at least mostly. Filvis was gaping, before turning away with a burning face, while Lafia uselessly flapped her jaw, unable to form words. Riveria's ears curled, and then even she blushed when Aze asked, aloud, what does horny mean? Belle and the girls flinched as Tiona laughed brightly in good nature. It means Belle was getting frustrated and needed some relief. How come you didn't say anything, Lil Rabbit? I woulda helped out with that, she grinned as she leaned in closer to Belle. Miss Tiona? Haruheim gasped, her ears standing up straight as she covered her mouth with a hand. Now wait just a second, Lily grit her teeth, before Ace spoke, again. Frustrated and relieved? What does she mean, Riveria? Ace asked for her motherly mentor to explain, already having given up getting something coherent out of her bubbly friend. That is, the elf fumbled, her blush growing as she failed to come up with something proper to say to such a loaded question. It means, Belle spoke, slowly but clearly, that Haruheim and Lily shared that they have feelings for me, and I shared that I returned them, and we acted on them, yup. Tiona smiled wider, popping her lips, loudly too, according your sign thingy. Unless it means something else by not keeping it down? She pointed, making the three's embarrassment worse. So anyway, I want you to know that I wasn't joking, Argonaut. But since you're on a date with Haruheim and Lily, you don't gotta answer now, but I'll be waiting. With a wave to them and her own familia, the Amazon left to return to her home. ICA said, moving closer, so they love you and you love them? Yes, that's right, the girls nodded in agreement with Belle's words. Ace smiled serenely in response, reaching her hand up to pet Belle's head. I'm happy. I love you too, I think. Belle. Though I'm not sure how you feel about me, still, I'm not sure if I can help you when you're horny? Will training with me more help? Bell gaped, taking his own turn to move his mouth without making a sound. HM? Ace tilted her head, but thankfully for Bell as well as Lily, and Haruheim Riveria chose to intervene at that moment. Now Ace, we shouldn't interrupt. You may speak to Bell later, like Tiona, but these three are already on an outing and we've taken up their time. Oh, sorry Bell. Lafia watched all of this happen, and silently resolved to give Bell a few words when he spoke to Ace and Tiona. Specifically, what words remained to be decided. Saying their farewells, the two groups departed each other, and, once the Loki Familia members and their charge were out of sight, Lily couldn't hold herself back from groaning. That chatterbox Amazon is gonna have the beans spilled to everyone we know outside of Hestia Familia. I just know it. At the end of the day, they hadn't had any more eventful encounters. Bell did wonder how long he should wait before going to speak to Tiona and Ace, but he decided that going tomorrow would be fine. He needed to prepare himself after the day's revelations. After coming home, Hestia had calmed tremendously, and allowed them to remove their punishment items. Unwinding and eating a late dinner, having not been in a hurry to face the others, quite yet they all wordlessly decided to head toward Bell's room, together. Arriving, Bell opened his door and came up short when he found Ryu waiting for him on his bed. She jumped up in a slightly flustered state when he entered, then noticed the other two. Forgive me, I didn't realize you three would all be coming together. I had thought to speak to Bell, but she was interrupted as Haruheim smiled, taking Lily's hand gently and speaking up. No, it's all right, Miss Ryu. Lily and I shall give you and Bell the privacy to talk. That's right, Lily nodded. Lily can't complain about it. You deserve that, Miss Ryu, just as much as we do. Haruheim winked at the elf out of Bell's sight, and the two bid the pair good night as they left for their own rooms. Bell watched them go, before turning back to his other guest. Smiling. Ryu? Well, now I'm not sure how to proceed. Fidgeting for a moment, the elf seemed to compose herself, but Bell could still see red coloring her ears. I had convinced myself not to say anything, even after I realized, then everything happened with us, facing the juggernaut in the deep levels. And all since then, you even brought me into your familia, Bell. My new familia. How could I not love you? Bell maintained his silence as it seemed Ryu wasn't done, and she indeed continued, in my shoes, I don't think anyone else would have any other thought for you than love. What you've done, who you are. I will say it now, that I do love you, Bell, Cranel. I don't know what you think, but she was silenced as Bell sealed her lips in a kiss. Her eyes widened for a moment, shining in the light of the full moon filtering through Bell's window. Then she closed them, tangling her fingers in his soft hair. After moments or hours she wasn't counting, they broke away from their kiss to breathe. Maybe that can be my answer? Bell grinned cheekily. But there are many admirers fond of you already, Bell. I'm starting to realize that, but why should that mean I can't return your feelings honestly with my own? I do love Lily and Haruheim, Ryu. And I very much have strong feelings for Miss Seer and Ace, too. None of that takes away from my feelings for you, Ina, Goddess, or anyone else. Now I can't tell whether you're being greedy or generous, Ryu teased, surprising herself. Call it both if you want, if it means being greedy. I'll return my honest love for everyone who shares those feelings. Ryu went silent, biting her lip at the words she was trying to form, and their sheer audacity. The lack of decorum, the betrayal of elven sensibility, and yet she still spoke them. Then can I ask you to be generous with me for the night, and in the future, a future shared between us? Ryu. Of course I will. Smiling, he went back and made sure his door was locked, and thinking clearly, he grabbed the sound stone and set it by the door. He wouldn't be making the same mistake twice. The following morning saw a pair laying calmly, both facing each other on their sides as the rising dawn began to light the room. Once the sun's rays began to fall on the elven girl's face, Belle's easy smile widened. "Good morning, Ryu." "Good morning, Belle." Deciding on an early start since they both felt refreshed despite lacking any sleep, the pair went out to train along with the other early risers. Stepping out, Belle and Ryu were a bit sheepish at some of the looks and whistles they got from Callie's Amazons, and the second-hand embarrassment from some of their own familia. Still, everyone stayed in good nature about it, and they were able to train in peace. Leaving, they went their separate ways to freshen up, then met again at breakfast. As Belle sat with Ryu, Haruheim, and Lily all nearby, it seemed that the three girls had come to an understanding without him, and were getting along as normal. In the corner of his vision, he saw his aunt sigh, before shooting a venomous look at his father, who was somehow covered in some nasty-looking bruises. Althea's expression cleared as Aiden leaned over to whisper, "Come now, that's both of the ladies you approved of now." "True, but I wasn't really expecting both. Or anything more than one. He's Materia's son, he will need to live his own life and deal with all the consequences of his choices. Come now, look here." Althea she glanced back and the man surreptitiously held up a familiar-looking stone. "The Soundstone? I thought you gave it to Belle?" "I did give him mine, but I also made another. I thought you might want to know." I had quirking her lips, the woman pinched his leg before focusing on the meal. Leaving home, Belle knew he had only one destination to go to. Before he could do anything else, with a purpose, he walked in the direction of Twilight Manor. Arriving, he was brought in and seated in the guest parlor, quickly. By then, both familia were fairly well acquainted with how good relations between them were, and there were little problems with visits. He didn't have to wait long before both Ace and Tiona came to greet him warmly, followed by a very much not warm Loki, with Finn at her side. "Humph, Riveria told me about it. So what, you went and got laid? Now you got the balls to waltz up and ask all my girls to join your little gigolo jamboree, huh?" Before Loki could get too wound up, Finn elbowed her gently. "Now Loki, that wasn't quite the story we were told, HM? Still, it would be better to hear it again from another perspective." Belle flinched as Finn smiled coldly at him, and realized that their captain knew all the details he wanted to already, so he decided on a straightforward approach. "Well, to tell the whole story. Two of my own familia members opened my eyes to their feelings about me, romantic feelings, I mean. After deciding that I returned those feelings, we expressed them. Goddess wasn't very pleased with us." Loki whistled, smiling for the first time. "Damn, she found out quick, huh? How'd that happen?" Belle's face lit up, and he couldn't force his eyes to look at any of the others. We weren't very quiet, at all. I think everyone heard us." Ace seemed confused at that point, but Finn and Loki looked smacked, Tiona simply bouncing side to side with a smile. "Geez. Almost makes me feel bad for Itty Bitty. Who knows, maybe she'll finally buck up now though. Anyway, continue." "Well, she decided we had to be punished, so we had signs put on us and were told to walk around the city. That's how we ran into Ace, Tiona, Riveria, Lafia, and Miss Filvis. The situation revealed to me that Ace and Tiona also had those same feelings, I believe." He looked for confirmation as the Amazon nodded enthusiastically while Ace simply smiled, nodding once at something she could follow and confirm. "I came today after organizing my thoughts at that, to give them a proper answer." Huffing, Loki crossed her arms, tapping her elbow with her finger as she feigned contemplation, until finally speaking again. "All right, whatever, out with it then. You want to tell them, you can, say it with me here, yeah? Whatever you say though, don't think I'll let either Tiona or Ace switch over to your familia over this." Smiling, he replied, "I wouldn't think of asking them to do that, Goddess Loki. Just like Hestia Familia is my home, this is theirs. It would be betraying their feelings to ask that." Getting in approving nod from her and Finn at that, he looked at the other two, Tiona, Ace. "Even though I didn't really need the extra time, I thought about what you two told me, and I can say without any doubt that I also love you too." At his words, their smiles grew just a bit brighter, but suddenly, a blur flew into the room between himself and them, and they saw Lafia pointing at Belle. Now wait just a minute. You can't expect me to sit by and let you come in here and seduce Miss A's and Tiona just like that? Loki groaned, and even Finn couldn't hold back an exasperated chuckle into his hand. Why, you'll have to prove it. Prove what? Would-dash. Lafia glanced at him. Then to the other, looking curiously at her. Well, that you really love them, of course. How do you want me to prove I love you? 3, Lafia? Obviously you'll need to 2. 3? Well, of course I'm including you in that, too. I won't assume you return them, but I hold the same feeling for you also, Lafia. Nothing but gibberish could make its way out of her mouth as she made her best impression of a lobster, all the while pointing at Belle. At last, she went to twiddling her fingers and muttered, "That's not fair." Groaning again, Loki stood up, throwing her hands into the air. "I give up. Do whatever you guys want, just for the sake of my sanity. Do not pull what you did at your place here, got it? I'll never be able to calm this situation down, or myself. Probably might even join you." The goddess muttered those last words so quietly that she thought no one else managed to hear her as she left the room, quickly followed by a stone-faced Finn. Unfortunately, Belle's high-level 7 hearing caught her words and his brain blanked out for a moment. Awesome. That means we got the go-ahead, right? So, Argonaut. I don't really have any experience, but I've read a lot of books, so, Miss Tiona, now hold on. It's uncouth to go straight to something. Well, Something what, Lafia? Whatever do you mean? Belle asked earnestly. I don't know what people who care for each other do, romantically, at least. I have memories of my mother and father, but nothing specific, so if you need any help with frustrations or relief, I would be glad to help you. Furiously blushing, but managing to power through, Belle clears his throat. Actually, first things first, if we all do share feelings, then I think we should visit my familia home. I want to sit down with Lily, Haruheim, and Ryu to make sure everyone is on the same page and not left out. Unanimously agreeing, the 4 left, with Lafia in particular, feeling relieved to hear that she wasn't the only elf involved in such a scandalous situation straight out of some lewd novel. Unknown to them, another meeting was happening at Heathfire Manor simultaneously to their own. And so, our goddess decided to allow Miss Filvis to convert into our familia after making her case. And with Lafia's support, along with A's, 2 Riveria finished telling Hestia, the other goddesses, Aiden, Althea, Belisarius, and Achilles about Loki's decision. Almost all of the former Evolus members had converted to new familia, and after her confession, even Filvis was allowed to join Loki familia as well. Well, I understand the situation, and even though she did try to attack me, I will trust Loki's judgment in this case. After all, Belle vouched for her, too. He did? Filvis herself spoke up for the first time in the meeting. That's right, he told me that if it came down to it, he would accept you as a member of our own familia. More than even the gods. I trust Belle's judgment, so I'll support Loki's decision with you. Humbled by the information, Filvis quieted, but Riveria spoke, again in her stead. That does sound like him. By the way, it might not be my business, but we ran into them the other day. Those gathered mostly chuckled, Aiden speaking up. He actually went today to speak with your juniors about what they said then. I see. Was their state just some prank, or was it? Nah, the rabbit-looking kid laid into the fox girl and the Paulum really good the other night, made enough racket to wake the dead, or at least all of us in this house. Callie laughed, only laughing harder at Riveria's second-hand embarrassment at her crude description. Belisarius flinched at the killing intent radiating off of Althea. Before Aiden squeezed her thigh, calming her as he rubbed the back of his neck with his other hand. Honestly, I should have predicted things would progress, and advise him about it sooner. Still, I gave him a sound stone so that it wouldn't be an issue in the future. Riveria faintly nodded, and almost lost her composure again. when she realized the implication of Aiden already having such an item with him. Surely he just desired his privacy, or was he, possibly? Well, such things happen, I suppose. Not that our familia has much to report on that front now, other than maybe Gareth getting closer to Mia, but I'm not sure their relationship is in that state, not you either. Riveria? Achilles asked, surprised. I had thought by now that you would have pursued such for yourself, not for Larfal's purposes, of course, but your own. Her cousin's query put Riveria on the spot as she grinned, slightly. I'm afraid I've not had much of the time I would need to invest in such pursuits, perhaps if there was someone among our familia, but I'd never see the dwarf that way, or Finn. Gods forbid, bet Riveria sighed, but when she opened her eyes, her cousin was smiling widely, and she felt a chill run up her spine. She'd been seen clear through. I see. Achilles closed her own eyes, still smiling. Well, thank you for having us, Goddess Hestia, but I suppose we should be returning, Goddess? I'm home, Bel said, leading his 3 guests into the great room where the meeting was taking place. Riveria and Philvis looked over, seeing a pair of girls they expected, but another that slightly surprised them. Both asked at the same time, Lafia? Chapter end notes. This will be all for now. Hope you all enjoyed this 3-part update and are looking forward to the continuation. Kaikasuru AI to Saicho. Chapter summary. Adventure doesn't cease for the sake of romance, nor does it need to. Who says one can't mix business and pleasure? All the while the world continues on around them. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. At the very least they were all alive. Indeed, that went well, Hayden glibly noted, breathing fairly heavily. Aye. Well, least we already found the loot we were tasked to, so now that Hamal is dead as dirt, we'll be good to go back home. Let's just take us all a wee little break first, though. Fine by me. Once we are all recovered, it won't take too long to return anyhow. I don't want us to move too quickly though. Remember, you said we should pay attention to the Antikythera as we go in case we pass near any divine artifacts, and I think that's a grand idea. Don't want to dawdle too much, though, just about out of booze. The elf simply sighed in response to his partner's carefree demeanor, but didn't object. Honestly, he was also ready to be home by his goddess, so whatever haste they could get away with was acceptable to him. In Orario, Bel got together with Aiden, Althea, Finn, Riveria, and his new girlfriends, as foreign as that concept was to conjure. Everyone, I've decided on going on an adventure again, and I know that Aze, Tiona, Lafia, and Ryu are able to, too, so I wanted to discuss all of us going at once. I think us 4 should kill the Chimera Ant Monster Rex on the 66th floor. Lily and Haruheim had heard of what he was talking about, but were the only ones among them who hadn't seen the monster for themselves. The reaction of most of the others set them on edge. Though that boss has a fairly high threat level, a low to middling 9, are you sure fighting Baylor with a small group wouldn't be a better idea? Finn asked, concerned for the safety of his juniors. Yes, Baylor would be a logical pick, but the Excelia of the next boss would be much higher in quality for us. While his level is higher and concentrated in one monster, we all have the speed needed to handle him, and together, the ability to kill him. Bell nodded. It's still risky, Riveria frowned, compared to Baylor. Although, I do acknowledge that even facing him with a small group might not be enough to qualify you all for the next level. Aiden nodded. To be honest, I was going to suggest you solo that Rex, Bell. After all, having fought it before, you have an advantage. Still, taking the others shouldn't prevent all of you from the qualification in my mind. Seeing everyone was in tentative agreement, Bell smiled. All right, then the day after tomorrow, we will go to the 66th floor for an adventure. After the decision, Lafia was feeling uncertain. When they first began preparing to undergo the grand quest, she was doubtful of the affair, but the initial training had raised her to first class, and the trip to the 100th floor pushed her further to level 6. Since then, she managed to grow her magic to D rank, all at such an astonishing pace it was nearly unbelievable. Even still, she couldn't help but doubt herself and whether she would be able to properly support the others during the fight. She could concurrently chant now, but her speed while doing so was. That boss has a fairly high threat level, a low to middling 9. Are you sure fighting Baylor with a small group wouldn't be a better idea? Finn asked, concerned for the safety of his juniors. Yes, Baylor would be a logical pick, but the Excelia of the next boss would be much higher in quality for us. While his level is higher and concentrated in one monster, we all have the speed needed to handle him, and together, the ability to kill him. Bell nodded. It's still risky. Riveria frowned, compared to Baylor. Although, I do acknowledge that even facing him with a small group might not be enough to qualify you all for the next level. Aiden nodded. To be honest, I was going to suggest you solo. That Rex, Bell, after all, having fought it before, you have an advantage. Still, taking the others shouldn't prevent all of you from the qualification in my mind. Seeing everyone was in tentative agreement, Bell smiled. All right, then the day after tomorrow, we will go to the 66th floor for an adventure. After the decision, Lafia was feeling uncertain. When they first began preparing to undergo the grand quest, she was doubtful of the affair, but the initial training had raised her to first class, and the trip to the 100th floor pushed her further to level 6. Since then, she managed to grow her magic to D rank, all at such an astonishing pace it was nearly unbelievable. Even still, she couldn't help but doubt herself and whether she would be able to properly support the others during the fight. She could concurrently chant now, but her speed while doing so was abysmal, compared to others like Riveria or Miss Rio. She had seen and knew she would be much too slow while casting to evade that huge ant. Lefty-ya-ya-ya-ya. She jumped slightly as Tiona gently grabbed her arm and tugged the elf along. I've been trying to get your attention, but I guess this'll have to do. Miss Tiona, what are you doing? Cheering ya up. Come on, we gotta grab A's and then we're gonna go ask Belle for some help. I can tell you're feeling down about the adventure, and you shouldn't, so we're gonna all help cheer each other on before we leave. Touched at her friend's insight and intentions, Lafia's resistance disappeared and she found herself looking forward to the get together. In hindsight, she ought to have expected it. Tiona had gotten her A's and Belle together at Heathfire Manor, collecting Ryu along the way before convening in his room. After settling in, Lafia managed to ask, so what did you plan for us to do, Miss Tiona? The others nodded as well, as they hadn't really been informed, but the Amazon just smiled brightly, closing her eyes as her pearly teeth flashed. We're gonna follow an Amazon tradition. Before a big battle, we're gonna go at it with our man until we give out. Her words were met with silence until the room grasped the situation, and both Ryu and Lafia flushed dark crimson at the plan, while Ace got confused. Tiona, you mean training? She waved her hand. Not really training, Ace, I mean, sorta? Look, we're gonna have sex with Belle to psyche ourselves up for the adventure. I don't know what sex is, Ace quietly admitted. Don't worry, Ace, I haven't done it either, but now that we're with Belle, I'm really excited to be able to follow the Amazons' tradition. Besides, Belle has some experience now, so it's all good. Getting more confident, Ace nodded, much to Ryu and Lafia's shock. Miss Ace, you can't mean to go through with this, right? Especially something like that with the 5 of us all here together. Lafia's mind blitzed through numerous scenes she had read from lascivious novels, embellished further by her own imagination. Her mind had substituted herself and Belle, even including A's and the others with the current situation. Of course I do. If this is what people who love each other normally do, why wouldn't I? You want to do it, too, don't you, Lafia? Feeling the attention of the room on her now, Lafia's embarrassment reached such an advanced point that she actually calmed down a bit paradoxically. Without thinking about it, she looked at Ryu. The other elf, with only slightly red cheeks, nodded at her. Lafia found her eyes widening a bit, but allowed herself to nod back at Ace. Aiden grunted from where he swung his own hammer, careful to not shatter the anvil with his strength. I'm surprised myself, another blow, and he huffed, these two have bright minds and great skill, with all of us and Charles, we'll have equipment to far exceed what even Zeus and Hera Familia had to work with by far. Charles himself had been working on another project, but the four of them continued to get solid work done, until they were interrupted by Althea. Getting their attention without causing any surprise, she safely made an entrance. Sorry to interrupt, but Aiden, you have a missive from the guild, HM? It must be important, then, I'm coming now, he said, setting his hammer down to walk toward her and the door. Althea's gaze caught Tsubaki staring down at Aiden as he walked away. When the woman realized she was caught, she whistled, sheepishly, holding her arms behind her head as the motion caused her to stick her large chest out, the bandages soaked through with sweat and turned almost transparent. Kyrian and Welf seemed utterly unbothered by it. By then Althea knew Welf was utterly in love with his own goddess, Hephaestus, while Kyrian himself seemed to hold affections for his own goddess, Hecate. Aiden, though, was very much interested in mortal women. As he walked by, she smiled slightly, deciding they would need to speak about this revelation to her, along with one she had long been aware of. Aiden grunted from where he swung his own hammer, careful to not shatter the anvil with his strength. I'm surprised myself, another blow, and he huffed, these two have bright minds and great skill, with all of us and Charles, we'll have equipment to far exceed what even Zeus and Hera Familia had to work with by far. Charles himself had been working on another project, but the four of them continued to get solid work done, until they were interrupted by Althea. Getting their attention without causing any surprise, she safely made an entrance. Sorry to interrupt, but Aiden, you have a missive from the guild, HM? It must be important, then, I'm coming now, he said, setting his hammer down to walk toward her and the door. Althea's gaze caught Tsubaki staring down at Aiden as he walked away. When the woman realized she was caught, she whistled, sheepishly, holding her arms behind her head as the motion caused her to stick her large chest out, the bandages soaked through with sweat and turned almost transparent. Kyrian and Welf seemed utterly unbothered by it. By then Althea knew Welf was utterly in love with his own goddess, Hephaestus, while Kyrian himself seemed to hold affections for his own goddess, Hecate. Aiden, though, was very much interested in mortal women. As he walked by, she smiled slightly, deciding they would need to speak about this revelation to her, along with one she had long been aware of. Speaking of that, said revelation was waiting outside the smithy in a garden, far enough away that the din of it didn't bother the scenery. Rose sat on a bench with her escort, Aisha, both enjoying the garden in the company of goddess Athena, when the man they were waiting on walked up to them, followed by Althea. Apologies, we were working in the smithy until just a moment ago. Athena seemed utterly unbothered. No need to worry, Sir Aiden, your promptness is commendable, MHMN, it's appreciated. Aisha smiled as she noted Rose's attempt to contain her fluster at the sight of the man. It was hard to blame the woman. After all, even for people with a Falna, his body and appearance were handsome, yet her own tastes were more suited to rabbit now than bear. Clearing her throat, Rose spoke up, it's no bother, Mr. Adventurer. She accidentally called him the nickname she used when they spoke at the guild. You see, we were sent to deliver a message from God Hermes. He has received the blessing of Lord Aurenas to deliver this message to you. She gingerly handed over an ornate-looking envelope. May I? He asked, as she nodded, with Aisha answering in the affirmative. Opening the letter, he quickly read the hieroglyphs sent by their ally. He even wrote it in God's script. Why so cautious? After reading, he understood, smiling, I see. Aisha, would you tell Hermes my thanks, and that I will do as he asks? Sure thing, that's no problem. But she had thought to needle Rose and fluster her even more as she escorted her back to the guild, but now she had a better idea. If that's the case, I'll need you to take Rose here back to the guild for me so I can go back to report to my Weasley god. Without waiting for him or Rose to respond, she bounded up and sauntered by. Before she spoke again, to Althea this time, silence, I've heard some interesting things about your captain lately. If it isn't too much trouble, would You, tell him to expect a visit from me soon? She grinned cheekily at Alfia's surprised face, the audacity displayed in front of her more than she had ever seen before. However, instead of beating the other woman into the dirt, she decided to hold herself in check. No, Belle held the Amazon in high opinion, and she really had genuinely helped him and their familia in the past. That didn't mean she couldn't think of another way to get back at her over this. In the meantime, Aiden had quickly cleaned himself up and reappeared to take Rose back, when Alfia, who had also waited with her and Athena, whispered quietly enough for only him to hear. Apparently she caught him off guard, as she managed to get him to fluster a bit, even showing a slightly red face. Before he could respond to her, she smiled to herself at the achievement. Walking away as confident as ever. Clearing his throat, Aiden smiled to Rose. Sorry about the wait, shall we? Happy to get back, Rose left with the man. Now alone in the garden, Athena held her own small smile, appreciating the cyclical beauty of the place. Sighing, she mused, mortals are so interesting. But weird. As they walked, Rose asked after the young members of his familia, and Aiden answered, while asking after the younger and new guild members she was responsible for. Their conversation flowed easily, and by the time they arrived at the guild, the sun had already sunk well below the edge of Orario's wall. Miss Rose, may I ask what duties you have left for the day? A bit surprised at his question, she smiled. Oh, not much. I need to ensure Misha properly closed out her exchange booth, as well as a bit of paperwork. But most of my work is done already. Then if it is agreeable to you, I will wait until your work is complete, and once you're done, walk you home. It's already quite late. Are you worried about me, Mr. Adventurer? I am a bit stronger than I look, you know? She teased. Oh, I'm sure it's probably just me being overly worried, but it would put my heart at ease to see you home safely. His bold words nearly made her fumble, but she was able to accept his invitation politely, not noticing that her tale was giving away her glowing good mood. A short while later, she exited the guild building and joined him on a walk to return home for the night. Most guild staff lived near each other, but Rose had an apartment further from the others, and a bit more of a walk from their workplace, but she liked it. Her mind flittered to a dozen things as her pleasant mood made the trip seem short, while Aiden was thinking hard. His thoughts were solely focused on what Alfia had told him. It was almost teasing, but he could tell she was serious, and yet. I can't believe she actually said that, and she's serious about it. If that's how she feels, then, smiling himself as he brought the woman home, he stood firm as she turned and grasped his right hand with both of hers. Thank you for bringing me home once again, Mr. Adventurer. Of course, he clasped her shoulder with his other hand, making no move to pull away his hand she was holding. Seems my worry was for nothing. I won't say it isn't appreciated. In fact, why don't you come inside and let me treat you to some food and something to drink? I'm not one for alcohol, but I'll brag about my cooking if it will convince you. His mind had discerned that behind their long-standing flirting, which was for him an exercise in politeness at first, was a genuine expression on her part. As time had gone on, he had come to not only admire her, but harbor such a feeling for her, too. This felt like a betrayal to young Alfia, so he kept it quiet, but had apparently underestimated Alfia's ability to read him. No convincing needed, Rose. I would love to join you tonight. His loaded words gave her a momentary surprise, but she happily agreed to host him as her guest. While Aiden had no ulterior motives than to enjoy Rose's food and company, it did end up being good judgment on his part to follow the advice given to him. Why not take a page from my Belle's book? Don't string women along, give them an answer one way or another. I won't be angry, just don't forget that stone for discretion. He ended up staying not just for dinner, but for the night, and as the sun began to warm the eastern side of Orario's wall, opened his eyes easily, noting the beginnings of dawn appearing in the sky out of Rose's bedroom window. Slipping out of her bed with ease, he stretched quietly, unwilling to wake her early, knowing she would have a full day of work after their conversation last night. He glanced back to see the woman turn Admiring her form showing through the thin blanket, he smiled as his heart swelled unconsciously as he gazed at her. I was right, it's just like when I look at Alfea. At least I can honestly say I wasn't simply horny. Ceasing his staring, he turned to admire the slowly growing dawn, stretching more as he looked at the changing sky. Losing track of time as he worked his body out, he failed to see his paramour wake, which he would chastise himself for. Rose fluttered her eyes open, rubbing her legs together as she turned toward her window, sitting up slightly before she noticed the man with her in her room. Flashing through the events of the previous day, she smiled widely. It wasn't a dream. We actually did that. She sat up a bit more to get a better look, her blanket falling from her chest to bunch up at her waist. The slight noise made by the fabric made the man stop in his stretching, as he stood straight and slowly turned to her. She kept her smile from turning smug as he blatantly ran his eyes over her, just as she shamelessly let her eyes roam every part of his completely nude body. Even while relaxed and no longer stretching, his muscles bunched and rippled easily beneath his skin as he moved. The thick abdominal wall thinly visible beneath the slim fat on his stomach, and the coat of thick hair covering it. Are you sure you aren't part werewolf? She teased, both still admiring the other as he responded. Well, can't be too sure, can we? He slipped his hand under the blanket and gripped her tail gently. I don't have such a fine, furred tail like this, though. Showing her teeth in her sharp grin, she reached behind and pinched him. You got a plenty fine tail, Mr. Adventurer. Showing his own teeth, he tossed the woman into the air with his one hand beneath her, letting her yelp in surprise before he caught her with the same hand. Instead of catching her softly though, he let his hand come up into a smack into the bare flesh beneath her tail. Before letting her lean into his chest, she turned her eyes up at him as they burned. Before she pulling herself up to his lips. After breaking away from the kiss, he smiled. Looks like someone is still in the mood even after the night we had. Don't pretend I'm the only one. She reached beneath where she was holding her and gripped him, enjoying the gasp he let out. Exchange to do my best to make sure that home always remains safe to return to. She sighed. Now let's go and have breakfast. It's the only proper way to start the day. In the dungeon, 5 figures were breathing heavily, battered and wounded, standing around the dissolving corpse of the 66th floor's monster Rex. The small party cheered their success, hugging each other in relief as Ryu collected the drop item of the boss. After their victorious relief, Tiona grabbed Belle by the arm and began dragging him back to the safe zone above. Tiona, what's the hurry? Now that we did it, it's time for the after-battle Amazon tradition. Chapter end notes. Please tell me that Rose Fanet didn't go forgotten on the wayside by our dear readers. Hold on, isn't there another guild advisor which might have some important weight to the story? It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh well, I'll figure it out, eventually. R.H. Undercroft, Peta Gypsyois. Chapter summary. After preparing for a trip once he had received Hermes info, Aiden swapped stories directly with the only other of his former gods. Coming away more informed, but also with more aid for the cause. Chapter notes, in which Zeus is Zeus, and Belle becomes slightly less dense, due to the benefit of his new experience. Exchange to do my best to make sure that home always remains safe to return to. She sighed. Now let's go and have breakfast. It's the only proper way to start the day. In the dungeon, 5 figures were breathing heavily, battered and wounded, standing around the dissolving corpse of the 66th floor's monster Rex. The small party cheered their success, hugging each other in relief as Ryu collected the drop item of the boss. After their victorious relief, Tiona grabbed Belle by the arm and began dragging him back to the safe zone above. Tiona, what's the hurry? Now that we did it, it's time for the after-battle Amazon tradition. Chapter end notes. Please tell me that Rose Fanet didn't go forgotten on the wayside by our dear readers. Hold on, isn't there another guild advisor which might have some important weight to the story? It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh well, I'll figure it out, eventually. R.H. Undercroft, Peta Gypsyois. Chapter summary. After preparing for a trip once he had received Hermes info, Aiden swapped stories directly with the only other of his former gods. coming away more informed but also with more aid for the cause. Chapter notes, in which Zeus is Zeus, and Bel becomes slightly less dense, due to the benefit of his new experience. Familia Oratoria Adamici Fanfiction, Chapter 48, Peta Gypsiois, We're Home. Gareth's voice boomed loudly as the party entered the city. Tione swatted him on the back of his head in aggravation. We're all happy about it, but no need to alert the whole city, from the gate. The dwarf rubbed his head in mock hurt and chastisement. You're right, lass. In that case, you and the rest should be fine to get back and report, HM? This old dwarf has a bar to visit. Yeah, Ken, I'll get home later. He was already running off toward the benevolent mistress before anyone cared to stop him. Sighing, Tione shrugged, looking toward Haydeen. Well, whatever, let's get back and report like he said, then we can get some rest, certainly. Then Huffire Manor it is. As it happened, the group that went to do battle with Hamal returned simultaneously with Bel and the others. So Haydeen, Tione, Bel, Lafia, Aze, Ryu, and Tiona sat with Aiden and the Dusdia to discuss their results. The Harbinger was slain successfully, though he was not awakened until we came upon him, Haydeen said. As was claimed, he was stronger than Baylor, though similar. We managed to find all the artifacts you mentioned bar the Golden Fleece, too. Although, to make up for that, we did find another on our return. Familia Oratoria Adamici Fanfiction, Chapter 48, Peta Gypsiois, We're Home. Gareth's voice boomed loudly as the party entered the city. Tione swatted him on the back of his head in aggravation. We're all happy about it, but no need to alert the whole city, from the gate. The dwarf rubbed his head in mock hurt and chastisement. You're right, lass. In that case, you and the rest should be fine to get back and report, HM? This old dwarf has a bar to visit. Yeah, Ken, I'll get home later. He was already running off toward the benevolent mistress before anyone cared to stop him. Sighing, Tione shrugged, looking toward Haydeen. Well, whatever, let's get back and report like he said, then we can get some rest, certainly. Then Huffire Manor it is. As it happened, the group that went to do battle with Hamal returned simultaneously with Bel and the others. So Haydeen, Tione, Bel, Lafia, Aze, Ryu, and Tiona sat with Aiden and the Dusdia to discuss their results. The Harbinger was slain successfully, though he was not awakened until we came upon him, Haydeen said. As was claimed, he was stronger than Baylor, though similar. We managed to find all the artifacts you mentioned bar the Golden Fleece, too. Although, to make up for that, we did find another on our return. Journey the handsome elf presented a wrapped parcel, along with 4 crates for the inspection of the items. Each crate contained one of the chariots, the divine armor sets. However, the wrapped parcel revealed a wooden sword. Goddess Hestia, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not the Enriha? Aiden asked. MHMN, sure is. I'm kinda surprised you guys found that though. Enriha is a creation of Enma, and I didn't think he had sent any of them down to Gakkai. Best not to look a gift horse in the mouth, perhaps, certainly not, in this case, Aiden noted. We didn't all try to test the artifacts, and none of them responded to the people who collected them, Tione said. We did, like you said, and waited until we gathered them all to test each in front of everyone. By the way, why were you all together coming back? Did you just finish a dungeon run? She pointed toward Bel and her fellow familia peers. Her sister nodded enthusiastically. Yup. We went on an adventure to kill that bug boss on the 66th floor. It was so wild. We took it down, just the 5 of us. Even more important though, you owe me 100 million Valis, Tione. Tiona cheered, puffing her chest out in pride. Well, why the hell? What are even talking about, you airhead? Our bet. Which, hold on, we only had one bet for that much. There's no way. Yeah, I ain't lying. I'm the first between us to do the Amazon battle traditions with someone I approve of, so time to pay up. Everyone simply watched as the two took control of the conversation with their private matter. Alright, fine. But you have to spill who, I won't believe you, otherwise. If I don't believe you, I don't pay you. Tione crossed her arms under her chest, something that normally would have intimidated or irritated her sister depending on the mood, but in response Tiona simply smiled wide and pointed right at Belle. Huh? The man who was confused but quickly caught on with everyone else. Really? Wait, no, that makes sense, actually, alright. Fine. Cost me some serious money, Belle. I didn't know you had it in you. As Tione smiled teasingly at him, Tiona scratched her cheek. Well, to tell the truth, it wasn't just me that did the tradition, we all did. She gestured at the other 3 girls, who all demonstrated varying degrees of embarrassment. A's, La Fia. Are you being serious, Tiona? After another nod, she whistled, you gotta be fucking kidding. Hold on. At the same time. To the side, Aiden sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Good thing Alfia isn't. His train of thought cut off when he opened his eyes and saw the woman in question standing in the doorway with murder in her eyes. Fuck. Before he could do anything, she vanished, and he sent a silent prayer for Belisarius' sake, that maybe the man would forgive him for not stopping her. As a result of their adventure, Belle managed to level up, once again, reaching the same as his aunt, Alfia. Taking the pragmatic choice of strong body for his development ability, his eyes caught on a new skill that he had overlooked. Gallant hair, living true to his rabbit-like appearance, the holder has become an incorrigible lover, allows the holder to better maintain his romantic relationships, form new ones, and prevent discord between his partners. Additionally, provides a boost in status to romantic partners, commensurate with the status of the holder. Swallowing heavily, Belle looked apologetically at Hestia, goddess. I'm not angry, Belle. Well, not about that skill. She clicked her tongue. I know you won't go around abusing it or anything. You love who you love. What I am mad about is who you aren't giving any lovin'. She shouted, pulling at his hair and his ears, not that it hurt him. Gee, goddess. Confused, Belle processed the words, and then he realized. Wait. All this time, goddess Hestia, you too, making sure nobody saw them, he pulled Hestia into a hug and locked his door. Be Belle. What are you doing? Sorry, goddess, but I need to confirm something before I continue so I don't make a fool of myself again. Do. Goddess, do you love me? Like, in that way? Suddenly, Hestia was very shy and embarrassed, unable to keep up with how this situation had flipped around on her. Well, I mean. Frustrated at herself, she finally blurted out, of course I love you, you big dummy. I have, even since it was just the 2 of us, living in the rundown church, she shouted, before clapping her hands over her mouth in shock at herself. Belle, though, just smiled at her, pointing back to the sound stone. No worries, goddess, it's just us. He leaned forward, flustering Hestia more and more until she finally allowed their lips to connect. The feeling was warm, intoxicating, even it was beyond comparing to alcohol, which Hestia had indulged in often enough to know. It was also over too soon, as he pulled back a bit, but then in a low, quiet voice Belle asked the question of her entire existence. Do you want to keep going, Hestia? Nobody really took notice of Hestia and Belle being absent from dinner, other than Belle's other lovers and his aunt. Alfia paid it no mind at first, until she grew suspicious. Before she could do anything, Aiden caught her and whispered, leave it be this time, I'll make it up to you. You had better keep in mind what I told you after you came home this morning. 2. On my honor, he said, looking toward Belisarius' bruised and swollen face. At least I kept him from a second beating. The next morning, Lily, Haruheim, and Ryu had all had the same idea, making and bringing breakfast to their captain, who had missed dinner the previous night. Laughing a bit at their synced plan, they decided to carry it out together, all going to his room. The door was unlocked, and they entered without a thought. However, they weren't prepared for what they found. On his bed, Belle was sprawled with Hestia laid on top of him, both naked and kissing each other, having not noticed the other 3 enter, closing and locking the door behind them. Lily cleared her throat as he and their goddess finally noticed them. Tooting dramatically, Lily admonished them, "Shame on you too. Lily can't believe this is how we find you after missing dinner last night. Ryu, Haruheim, what do you think we should do?" For a moment, Belle panicked, remembering that unlike with Ace, Lafia, and Tiona, he hadn't discussed anything about Hestia with the rest of the girls he was in love with. Thinking to correct his offense, he started to lean up, holding Hestia close to preserve some of her dignity, but he was cut off before he could speak. Smiling, Haruheim looked between him and their goddess. "Well, it isn't like we were unaware of the situation totally. So in light of this, I think a bit of punishment is in order," she said, moving to join the pair in his bed. Agreed. Ryu smiled mischievously, following the other girl and wiggling her fingers menacingly. Lily sighed. Lily agrees, but she's also gonna make goddess Hestia wear a placard and walk around the city with Master Bell, too. With things in Orario continuing apace as he planned, Aiden, made to carry out Hermes' request, with the permission the god had already gotten for him from Arenas. Tasking the others with overseeing things in the city and with the quests for the harbingers and artifacts, he left for Milestora. Intrigued by the proposition of meeting Zeus again, he wondered why the god had asked for said meeting in the first place. Still, all the speculation in the world wouldn't give him an answer. And in little time he arrived in the beautiful city. Admiring the scenery as he went, but focused on following the directions given to him. Apparently Hermes would have liked to go with him, but was, with his familia, hunting down the artifacts in the abandoned world. All the same, he found a grand house, nearly palatial in size and scope, and approached, believing he had found his way. Crossing the grounds, he was met by a woman who triggered some familiarity, though he couldn't place her name. "Forgotten me, Horace?" "Well, not that I could say any different if it hadn't been for Hermes visiting us a while ago. It's Nessa." The name made things click in his mind. "Now I see, it's good to see you, Nessa. We'll have to catch up, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm being waited on?" She nodded. "Yes, the others are all in now, though you're just a day behind the last arrivals, and ahead of schedule yourself. No need to delay, there are still many things to be done." "Could you show me the way?" "Of course, follow me." She led him into the halls of the mansion, around a side corridor, and out a pair of doors onto the veranda at the rear, wrapping around the building and making a border between it and the sheltered courtyard within. Awaiting him was a collection of Dustia, all taking lunch together. His arrival was noted first by the one who invited him, "Amen." Swallowing, Zeus cheered, "Horace, haha. Good to see you, boy. Come, sit and eat with us." Zeus had stood and embraced the man, then ushered him to the table where the others had now given him their full attention. "I trust you remember Hera?" "Of course, I'd not forget her. Flattery you ought to know will get you nowhere," Horace the goddess quipped. "Got me plenty far with Althea." His response made her mouth drop as her eyes grew to match the dinner plates. Zeus was in a similar state, but recovered more quickly. "Horace, you dog, are you serious?" "I wouldn't lie about it." His laconic answer made him roar with laughter, even as Hera seemed to question reality itself. "Her, that girl? There's no way." She was practically the mortal incarnation of misandry after that cretin seduced Materia. Anyway, Aiden sighed as he sat, breaking bread with the gods and goddesses present. "I remember Hera, but I'm afraid I can't say the same for everyone else. My apologies." "None needed." Heriris, another goddess, smiled at him. "We were never introduced." "Anyway," Zeus nodded and introduced them. "Forgive my manners, this would be Astrea. Formerly a goddess of Orario before she met a similar situation as Hera and I. These two handsome lugs are my brothers, Poseidon and Hades." Zeus gestured to first, an even larger figure than himself, swelling with muscle and adorned with a fiery red golden beard and mustache. His mane of hair bounced as he laughed, clapping the other man on the back. "Sorry we stole all the handsome looks before you came along, little brother." "I'm not so sure. My work in the underworld is not the first thing anyone associates with attractiveness." The other man, tallest, yet lean, spoke softly. Jet black hair fell past his shoulders, and his clean-shaven jaw was sharp, framing his high, prominent cheekbones. Following their line, he was drawn by the light gray eyes framed by the god's slim brow. So this is he? Well met, oldest of man. It might not be my place to tell you, but the Dusdia related to death have a bit of a wager going on with you. The short of it is how long before you expire, as it were. Hopefully there's still a few decades left for me, the man cheekily answered. I've got some reasons to leverage this lifespan. Now, the banter continued back and forth while the meal was finished, before at last Zeus cut into silence in the conversation, with seriousness. Now I believe we can move on to business, yes? Not waiting for any response, he continued, Horus, we thought it best to let you know that you aren't the only ones who have been making plans lately. Hermes has kept us up to speed, but now we needed to inform the others through you specifically of what we are thinking of and know moving forward. I'm all ears. Good. The first thing which you might have guessed is that after we left, we began the formation of an organization which would be a counter to Evolus, though it took a long time to build up any notable strength. Unfortunately, Astria's familia fell victim to them before we could act against them in any meaningful way. Since then, though, we've come to the point of being ready. Now, Hermes told us about the encounters you all had with them recently, and that's why we called you here. So are you going to take care of them while we fight the dragon, then? No, I'm afraid we don't have that kind of power. Instead, we've been stocking up preparations for a big move that they're clearly planning. Hermes seems to figure that they will wait until you all leave to fight the beast, then strike targets all across Kakai. If you aren't strong enough to fight them, then what's the plan? I didn't say we couldn't fight them, we just need to wait until they divide themselves. See, we aren't the only ones in on this little deal. Rhea in Altina, Amaterasu in the Far East, Odin and Frigg, Pele and Dedene, and Osiris with Isis in the south. He smiled. We are all preparing. No one has any individual that can stand up to them or their forces, but our familia are strong. Besides, Poseidon, our aces are in the range between levels 3 and 4, but they are numerous. We've built up a little army as an extension of Orario to counter the actions of Evolus, at least in part. Orario itself will no doubt be targeted by some major forces, but we will likely require aid when the strike happens. Between you guys and whoever stays behind, in Orario, no pressure in killing the dragon, but now to do it quickly and hurry on to aid the rest of the world at once. He sarcastically chuckled. Now don't be that way. After all, my own kiddos demanded I let them join you for the quest, so we aren't leaving you without a helping hand either. Poseidon held up his hands, opening all 5 fingers on one, and 3 on the other, 5 level 5s, 3 level SIXS, and even my familia's captain, Theseus, a level 7. She's one tough woman, and the rest won't slow you lot down a bit. All first class? Then, you are holding the others back to support against the attacks planned by Evolus? That's right. Hermes told us the cutoff for the dragon had been set at level 5 by you, and that you already collected everyone you could. Well, my kids decided they were all in. The ones that could join, anyway. They're here now, and will go to Orario when you leave to return. I have to tell you though, the kids are used to fighting on ships. Land won't be an issue, but they might need some time to adjust. That's still great aid all the same, and most welcome. There's one more thing we wanted to tell ya. Horus Zeus interjected. How long did you account before confronting the dragon? 5 years at first, but I reduced that to 4 later, so that would leave roughly 2.5 left, now I believe, right? Might want to cut that again to 2 even. It's harder for the Dusdia in Orario to tell, but we can notice its presence. The monster is close to recovering its strength, and then it will rampage again. We also know that you're now aware, but once it recovers, it will then begin to grow even stronger than it was when our familia fought it before. Yeah, I know. The effort we're gathering is the last push to try and finish it. There won't be another attempt, much as it is hard to believe from Alphea's telling. I would say it was probably at a high level 11 when they confronted it, and likely bordering even on 12. If it gets any stronger, I feel that it will be unconquerable, and will establish a new age of its dominion over Gakkai, yes, and all the gods and goddesses will be sent back to Tenkai, by it, a creature which fears no repercussion from killing our current forms, Hades said. We will do all we can, believe me. I think the key will be your grandchild, Zeus, Hera. Ha 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 ha, don't gotta tell me twice. Hermes told us he was growing like a weed, level 7 in little more than 2 years. The laughter of Zeus was interrupted as Aiden cut him off. Level 8 now, Zeus, that isn't all, either. What? What do you mean that isn't all? That's a whole damned lot. Zeus laughed again out of astonishment. Would you ever have pegged that hopeless romantic Belisarius, to have a son wooing a full harem of lady adventurers and more? Cheering like a fool, Zeus threw his hands in the air, whooping, he can't be stopped, my boy's living a man's romance. He's gonna be a hero, a harem-having hero. Groaning at the man's antics, Hera bemoaned that Materia's son would grow up so uncouth even with Alphea's influence, while the others mostly rolled their eyes. Always with the hero obsession, Poseidon shook his head. Whatever, as long as the dragon is beaten, I don't care if he fucks it to death himself. Now there's an idea. Zeus pointed at his brother, but a ceramic platter shattered on his head, knocking the god out cold, as Hera fumed. Anyone else got something smart to say? Well, if that's all, I'll be going now. Aiden decided to excuse himself, unwilling to bother with Hera in her current mood, status or no. I'll get the others so you won't be delayed in returning to Orario. Poseidon hurriedly left the table. Hades sighed. Simply enjoying some wine after the conversation was concluded while speaking to Astrea. Good. Nessa, would you be a dear and roll that oaf into the grass? I won't be listening to him bellyache about sleeping on the stone again. All things considered, they made good time back home. Theseus led Poseidon Familia's elite behind him, Jason who had already claimed the Golden Fleece, as well as Aegeus, Drake, Columbus, and Magellan. The two former were almost elderly, by unblessed standards, but still fit to join them as level 5s. The latter three were much younger, but still proven first-class adventurers. The level SIXS with them were a pair of female twins, Nephili and Arai, as well as another middle-aged man, Heyerdahl. When they returned, they were met with some raised eyebrows from the Ganesha Familia guards, but were allowed through the gates with little trouble. No, the trouble was waiting for them at home. Alphea, Captain, Goddess, I'm home, and I brought some unexpected guests. Aiden began an enthusiastic greeting, but trailed off as he entered into the living area, where Alphea stood, with Belle and Hestia kneeling, the man with his head bowed. To the side, Haruheim, Lily, and Ryu were standing with small, satisfied smiles. Come on Alphea, girls, I've had this darn thing on all day, can't I take it off now? I let you guys take yours off before dinner, and I didn't even make you wear one at all, Ryu. Now Goddess, you must understand that certain things have consequences. Alphea curtly responded, honestly, as a goddess, with your nature, I had hoped you would help reel him in, seems like there's just no end to it lately. She sent her nephew a withering look as he lowered his head further, nearly touching his knees with his nose. Having ignored them until then, Aiden was about to start sorting things out before Theseus threw an elbow up on his shoulder and leaned against him. Hey! Why does that little goddess have a sign that says, I love a horny rabbit too much, and can't keep it down? The room turned their attention to them, and Alphea turned her dun look to him. Really? He held up his hands in surrender. I'm innocent here, I swear, I don't care. They can explain. She walked up to him, grabbing his collar and pulling him along. You room. Now she tried to whisper, but all those save for Hestia heard her easily thanks to their blessings. Oh man, this'll be pretty fun. Theseus laughed before turning back to Hestia. Well, we came to join the cause, goddess. Our god Poseidon allowed us to come, but we'll need to convert to your familia for the time being. Is that alright? It's fine, Hestia whined as she put her head into her hands. This is just embarrassing. Arcanum Redux, Chapter Summary. A new skill comes to Belle with extreme consequences, though. through the troubles can be found the foundations for richer strength. Chapter notes. Did you think the only result of Belle's escapades would be humor and drama? Read on to discover some actual plot implications of our characters' bedroom developments. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Familia Oratoria Adamici Fanfiction, Chapter 49, Arcanum Redux. With their new additions, Aiden reworked the deployment schedules for the Harbinger teams slightly, but aside from that, business returned to normal fairly quickly, as their routines had become of late, at least. On his next status update after leveling, Belle was hit with another surprise. Belle, you have another new skill, but just look at it. Hestia shoved a paper into his hands, covering her eyes. Don't show it to anyone after, okay? Affirming her request, he looked down to the new information, noting the low gains his stats had made in the course of the month. Nature of divinity, having altered the nature of a goddess by changing the status of her virginity. You know what you did. The holder has gained a deeper sense of divine nature, allows the holder to unlock the hidden potential of the fauna. Hidden potential. Belle muttered, looking back at his goddess. Don't be shy, Hestia, now my love for you is as engraved on my back as my first love for A's. Belle. That's so sweet, but still so embarrassing. Hestia's heart squeezed. But don't ask me about whatever hidden potential is, or something. I don't have a clue what it means. Well, what is the fauna? Let's go over the basics. Alright, the fauna is the blessing any god or goddess can give to a mortal here in Gakkai. It is the only regular use of our arcanum that we can wield freely, so from your perspective, it a power all the gods have, and it applies the same to every mortal? Yup. It is shaped by your experiences, but the fauna starts the same for everybody. Doesn't seem like it has anything to do with adventuring and leveling up, unless level 10 is some kind of barrier that needs a skill like this to break through. Nah, I don't think that's it. Hestia disagreed. Leveling is an obvious part of the fauna, so even if there was a theoretical limit, it wouldn't be hidden, really. If that's not it, then I really don't know, but I'll ask Aiden. He might be the only other person with an idea. Well, then I'll ask old man Arenas. Divine nature? Aiden asked, mulling over what Belle had told him. I could be wrong, but maybe there's an additional quality to the fauna that the skill unlocks. We all have stats, skills, development abilities, and sometimes magic. Perhaps the skill unlocks another quality for you? Hestia didn't mention seeing anything like that when she updated my status. Maybe it will show up in the future? Or maybe it alters the restrictions of the fauna. Aiden got a gleam in his eye. Restrictions? Yes. For example, you are able to grow by bounds, but even past the normal limits of S in your stats, which people can normally do only in rare exceptions, right? I wasn't thinking about that because I've always been able to do it. Well, what other restrictions do our fauna normally have? I don't. Wait. Magic. We can normally learn only 3 different kinds of magic. That's right, but I was also thinking, what if the next time you level up, you're able to claim all the development abilities available to you, instead of just picking one? Belle and Aiden quickly let the idea get away with them, lost in speculation as Rai walked by. Seeing his mentors gabbing wildly about something he couldn't understand, he decided to go see if Laurier and Oriana would be ready for another trip to the dungeon soon. So that's about the gist of it. Hestia had explained the situation to Arenas, who sat still as stone while Fels listened in. The skeleton was equally puzzled about the whole thing as Belle and Hestia were, lost his musings when Arenas spoke. Know that you must keep this quiet, Hestia, even from the boy himself. He waited until she agreed before continuing. There is a double meaning to the wording of the skill. First, which the boy has probably discerned if he went to silence or Herreras for advice, the limits on his fauna will be altered by this new skill. It could simply raise those limits, or remove them entirely, a boon for him, to be sure. However, more imperative is the second meaning. The fauna, Hestia, is a blessing bestowed by us gods, most know this. However, it is not the only blessing. For example, the divine artifacts which the heroes now search out are another. If you were to say how the artifacts came to be, how would you put it? Well, the Dustia used their arcanum to create them, right? So, the fauna is similar because we use arcanum to create it? Close. The fauna, like the artifacts, are created with arcanum, but that isn't what makes them potent. Both are useful only when arcanum is channeled through them. The artifacts can be held by anyone, but will only respond to someone with a blessing of their choosing. At his words, realization began to dawn in Hestia's eyes. So really, the fauna is just a conduit that allows mortals to channel tiny parts of our arcanum? To be specific, the fauna itself channels the arcanum into the manifestation associated with it. The arcanum through the fauna becomes their boosted power, magic, and skills, which put them above unblessed mortals. If Bel has unlocked the hidden potential of the fauna, I believe the second meaning to that is that he can now perhaps intentionally begin to channel more arcanum through his fauna. Bel. Hello. Has anyone seen Bel? Hestia, short of breath, had run home, failing to find anyone until she stumbled on Alphea, Ryu, and Haruheim talking. Goddess, what's wrong? Haruheim was the first to jump to her aid. Listen, where's Bel? I've got to talk to him. Goddess, Bel left a short while ago to make a quick dive into the dungeon, Alphea said, while Ryu nodded in agreement. He said something about trying out a new skill after talking to Aiden, and they went to go to the mountain zone to try it, I think. Oh no, can you guys get a group together to bring them back as quick as possible? I just talked to Arenas about Bel's new skill, and he wants him to stay out of the dungeon for the time being. It could be too dangerous. The younger girls were about to start asking Hestia questions, but Alphea cut them off. Of course, Ryu, get Belisarius, Musashi, and Otter and send them after me. Once you've done that, alert the others to form a force and wait on the 18th floor. Without any further words, the woman immediately ran as quickly as she could for the dungeon, her body becoming a silver and black blur. Bel and Aiden didn't notice anything strange about the dungeon until they had passed into the safe zone on the 50th floor. Right after Bel had defeated Baylor on his own in what might have been a record time. As they stepped past the wrecks and into the floor below, the dungeon rumbled ominously. In an instant, both froze, on the lookout for any traps or dangers, wondering if someone above them had triggered the sound. This is just like. Bel muttered. What did you say, Captain? The sound is the same as when Goddess Hestia and Lord Hermes came to save us from our first trip down to floor 18. Goddess did something during my duel with Mord, and then he was cut off as the dungeon tremored again, far more violently than before. From the ceiling above, 3 shadows fell over the entirety of the floor. After a moment, fissures opened up with a clamor, cracking wide as 3 forms fell down with a matching trio of thundering booms onto the ground. As the dust cleared, both narrowed their eyes despite their shock. You gotta be shitting me, Aiden cursed. 3 Rexes spawned at once in a safe zone. Bel grit his teeth. No, look at their coloration, they're not normal Rexes, they're enhanced species. Aiden nodded his chin at the monsters. A copy of Baylor stood closest to them, silver-furred with dark red skin, instead of its usual black fur and pale, creamy skin. Behind it, harder to spot for its mottled green and brown body, was a chimera ant Rex, looking at them with its head tilted to the side. However, at the back of the floor, near the entrance to the 51st floor, was a version of Ungoliant. The spider Rex was much larger than its normal counterpart. Instead of its dull, grayish-blue color, it was pitch dark as night, looming large, enough to encompass a portion of the whole floor. Bel, we need to retreat. I looked already, the entrance was blocked off. Bel kept his eyes on the monsters now. The same thing had happened all that time ago, when they were forced to fight the irregular Goliath. It was likely that they wouldn't be able to leave the floor until the 3 monster Rexes were dead. Fuck, alright Bel, think of the last floor as a warm-up, kill that Baylor as fast as you can, and I'll kill the ant. We'll have to do this, while avoiding that abomination there. He indicated the giant spider monster. That was all the time they were afforded as the monsters roared in unison, and the 5 charged toward the center of the safe zone. NBSP, I wish we could have a bit more information to go off of, Musashi grunted as they raced down deep into the dungeon. We'll have answers soon, better safe than sorry, Belisarius cautioned. Quiet, Althea commanded, and no more words passed the rest of their trip down. Coming to the passage from the 49th floor to the 50th presented a challenge, though. It's sealed? The samurai questioned. Does this happen from time to time? No, this is unusual, and that's a bad sign, Belisarius muttered. Otter stepped back, then the other two realized why as they heard Althea quietly chanting her magic, aiming at the sealed way. Joining the Boaz, they took cover until her spell triggered, Genos Angelus. A roar blasted through the sealed wall, a rampage of force that tore through dozens of meters of adamantite and orichalcum that the dungeon forced into the way to block the passage. On the other side, Belle and Aiden took note, but couldn't tear their eyes from the fight. Both had gathered a number of wounds, being equipped only with light armor and his Hestia knife. Belle stoically attacked Baylor as the larger Ungoliant tried to swat him with its legs. Aiden fought the Chimera ant barehanded, avoiding the fangs of the spider monster and blades of the ant. Simultaneously, but not perfectly. Gospel. Baylor was rocked by Althea's magic, which was all the opportunity Belle needed. Jumping up, he spun around the Rex, carving into its neck as he went, until he completed the slice and yanked on the top of the monster's head, tearing it from his shoulders and jumping off the body as Ungoliant tried to attack him again. Belisarius and Musashi went to draw the attention of the larger boss, and Otter moved to help Aiden kill the enhanced Chimera ant. It tried to jump out of the way when he came close to slash at it, but from behind, Aiden wrapped his arms around its thorax, and Otter's sword swung horizontally, slicing off its head. In short order, they all turned their attention on the giant spider, which was proving tough to attacks and resistant to magic. This left them to a battle of attrition that seemed to be not in their favor, so Belle did as he usually did in such situations and charged his most powerful skill. Something was different. Immediately as he activated Argonaut, the chimes that would sound rang out like grand bells of a cathedral. He could feel the full energy of the skill available in an instant. The full charge of 8 minutes somehow reached in that moment. Dual charging, his skill revealed the same, and putting the thought aside for later, he acted. Firebolt. He shot one charge of his skill and magic into the Hestia knife, jumping toward the boss head-on as he prepared the other charge of Argonaut to swing the strike home, Argo Vesta. His strongest attack landed, knocking the spider back on its hind legs, but as he pulled back his knife, one of its front legs swatted at him again, finally landing solidly against him and sending him rocketing into the wall across the floor. Strategican. Throwing his near-permanent caution aside, Belisarius flew into a flurry of motion toward the last monster, Rex. He could bet on his son being alive, for now, but he couldn't afford to waste the chance he bought them by doing anything but killing the boss immediately. Enhanced species were notorious for one particular ability, after all, regeneration. His ace in the hole was a skill which allowed him to commit his mind and remaining stamina into a single attack, while the skill allows him to know the best possible place to strike, and now he was aiming for the space just below the spider's colossal head. The blade of his falchion passed into the monster, then continued on in, before going clean through and beyond. His attack carried him all the way into the dungeon wall above, and behind Ungoliant, having cut off its head and embedding him into the wall. Losing his strength quickly, he let go of the weapon and fell to the ground. Aiden looked around, noting that all 3 of the Rexes had been beheaded, and were certainly dead as no regeneration seemed to be activating, but they also weren't dissolving into ash, so for good measure, he quickly dug through the bodies with his hands until finding and extracting all of their magic stones. He only relaxed after watching Baylor at last fade into ash. He looked back at Otter and Althea, who had retrieved a living but unconscious Belle, before grabbing Belisarius. Musashi nodded. Jumping up, he pulled the man's sword from the wall and grabbed up the monster drops as Aiden smiled his way. Let's get back above ground, quickly. And find out just what the hell happened here. Some hours later, after everyone had returned and recovered, they were able to swap stories, and with Belle's input, reach some conclusions. So I can't go into the dungeon anymore? He sounded disappointed, knowing there was so much more for him to do down below. For now, at least, Hestia smiled bitterly. You just need to get used to your new skill and learn how to control it. Speaking of, why don't we get you an update, mister? Might shed some light on things. Belle smiled and acquiesced to his goddess's advice. Hestia? Belle, take a look. Confused at her lack of explanation and odd demeanor, Belle quickly took the sheet to scan it, and his eyes immediately popped out of his skull. Belle Cranel, fair hair, level 8, 9, strength, H154, X1404, I0, endurance, I98, X1900, I0, dexterity, G201, X1512, I0, agility, F300, XX2128, I0, magic, G289, X1677, I0, magic spell slots. 1. Firebolt, short chant magic that hits the target with a blast of electric flame. Chant, Firebolt. 2. Selim Veil, enchantment magic which coats the user in a cloak of lightning. This boosts the agility and dexterity of the user, while imbuing additional damage to their attacks, as well as their defense, meaning that those who land attacks will be hurt by the lightning. A secondary chant can be used to launch the electricity in all directions as an attack. Primary chant, Rage, Wrath of Heaven. Secondary chant, Distal. There is an additional quality to the user's Selim Veil that is currently unavailable. Skills, Liara's Freeze Familia, fast growth as long as feelings last. The strength of the effects corresponds with the level of the user's feelings. As a side effect, it makes the user immune to charms. The effective growth is extended to those viewed by Belle as family and close friends allies. Argonaut allows a charge for a counterattack. It requires 9 minutes, formerly 8, for a full charge and can either sound like a small chime or a grand bell depending on the power stored. It can be used for any type of attack, but the effects will dissipate when the user attacks or they lose focus. Ox Slayer heavily increases all abilities when fighting raging bull-type monsters, potentially making the user stronger than their actual level when fighting them. Dragon's Bane increases damage dealt to all dragon-type monsters and reduces damage taken from them. Makes finding dragon-type monsters easier. Gallant Hare, living true to his rabbit-like appearance, the holder has become an incorrigible lover, allows the holder to better maintain his romantic relationships, form new ones, and prevent discord between his partners. Additionally, provides a boost in status to romantic partners, commensurate with the status of the holder. Nature of Divinity, having altered the nature of a goddess by changing the status of her virginity - you know what you did, the holder has gained a deeper sense of divine nature, allows the holder to unlock the hidden potential of the fauna. Development abilities, Luck S, Providence I, Abnormal Resistance B, A, Escape C, B, Mage A, Sage I, Chain Attack F, D, Spirit Healing H, F, Strong Body I, G, Available Abilities, Healing Power I, Strong Defense I, Knife Fighter I, Magic Resistance I. Staring at the sheet, he couldn't comprehend it. More significant than the nearly year-long expedition that they spent going all the way down to the 100th floor, and at a higher level. Looks like your theory about multiple development abilities was accurate, Hestia groaned, looking like death warmed over. I went ahead and gave you all of them, no reason not to, right? I mean, we fought drastic odds, but even then. Your magic still has that weird thing though, don't know what that's about. I guess unless we have a couple more grimoires laying around, we can't put your other theory about magic to the test either. I'll keep training with Althea. Belle nodded. Mr. Hayden, Ms. Riveria, and Aiden, whoever I need to so I can try to unlock magic naturally. I don't have enough to buy a grimoire, and I can't dip into the funds for the quest in good conscience for that, unless everyone agrees. Pretty sure that's part of what that money is for, but that's just how you are. Hestia gave a genuine smile. Well, you could just ask everyone? Maybe later. Most people are busy, and Mr. Nobunaga's group is still out hunting Castor and Pollux anyway. His goddess shrugged in response, but then the news turned their shock at last into happiness. After all, Belle had leveled up yet again. A knock sounded at the door, and the pair was unsurprised to see Althea, Belisarius, and Aiden at the door. Well? Althea asked curtly. It's certainly strange, but definitely good news. Hestia clenched her hands into fists, holding them up by her shoulders. Belle leveled up to 9. The three displayed nothing but blank stares of shock at her and her captain before Aiden broke the silence with laughter, tears coming to his eyes before he was able to speak. Perhaps we all ought to get updated. Maybe that mess brought everyone to the next level? Damn, I said it, so why not me, too? Partly due to not having won in a long while, and the battle being so harsh, they decided to actually go through with getting updates, and Aiden's jest proved to carry more foresight than he could have guessed. Screw it, then, Althea, Belisarius, you can both level up. Congratulations. Hestia cheered, no longer having the energy to give a single shit beyond being joyful. Althea, you should wait before going through with it. Your stats should still be pushed higher, you though? Feel free. Aiden nodded to the other man, who snorted in disbelief. Feel free, he says. What the hell? Belle, would you go get Musashi, too, while I'm at it? Someone might want to let Otter and Freya know as well. Hestia sighed. Musashi, as it so happened, had a very similar case to Althea. He could level up, but had uni-deal stats. Otter couldn't level up, like Aiden, but his stats were pushed solidly into a high C and low B, average. For Aiden, his highest stat endurance was sitting at a middling B rank. Otter's strength was a high B. Needless to say, both were looking for the opportunity to grow further, and such chances were closing in quickly as their window of time drew closer to the 0 hour. Chapter end notes. Bit of a close call, but at least his new skill is very much playing into his power. Poor Belle, but them's the breaks of being what is basically the first true demigod of Gakkai. Shiko wa Chikarade Wanaku Michidiru. Chapter summary. With a powerful but unwieldy skill, Belle has to cope without the dungeon. Luckily for him, he has plenty of help, and adventure abounds even above the ground. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Familia Oratoria Adamichi Fanfiction. Chapter 50. Shiko wa Chikarade Wanaku Michidiru. Oi, fair hair. Belle turned his head from his magic practice, noticing the figure he was expecting based on her voice. Ms. Aisha? Hi. He jogged up, letting her into the grounds of Huffire Manor. Water, you doing here? Had some free time. Haru told me you'd been put on dungeon quarantine again? He grimaced slightly, before laughing and rubbing his neck. Yeah, some things happened, and now I need to figure out how to control a new skill before I can try going back down again. Nothing wrong with that. Belle looked at her expectantly as she continued. It isn't actually that unusual for something like this to happen. When someone gets a new, powerful skill, they will eventually need to be able to use it, like breathing while in the dungeon, but few can do it from the get-go. So, training, just like with the basics, that makes sense. Belle started to think, agreeing with the viewpoint, but the woman wrapped an arm around his head, pulling him down against her chest. Damn right. Now then, since you're freed up with time, I was thinking we could have a little chat about something else Haru told me, and maybe you can explain why I'm the one having to come to you. A pleasant chill ran up Belle's spine, and for the first time, Aisha's teasing didn't make him squirm with embarrassment and want to run. It had a rather different effect on him now. Confidently and quickly, he reached around to squeeze her opposite hip and slid his face up her chest until he brought his mouth to her ear and whispered a proposition to her. Stepping away, he saw a blinding smile nearly split her face. Matching it, he dashed off at an easy pace, just letting her give chase and keep him in her sights. He'd let her catch him when he was ready. Watching the pair run off, Alfea sighed after having seen their expressions. I won't say you have to accept anything, but he is going to do as he pleases more or less. Aiden smiled at her slightly. And it seems like his time with Loki's girl has acquainted him well with the affectations Amazon women. No, I do accept it. He slept with Hestia, a virgin goddess. There isn't much more to say if you think about it. I can say he won't turn into an actual gigolo. Probably. She swatted his arm hard. Don't jest about that. Oh dear, I do apologize. How could I make it up to you this time? I'll think about it. Really? Not sure if I should be worried or not this time. If you were going to worry, you shouldn't have joked. Guess I'll just have to accept what you decide. I'll tell you, by the end of the day, things were progressing apace quite well. Harbingers were being slain with difficulty, but no severe casualties. Artifacts were being found, even more than were projected thanks to the tools being used. The dungeon, of course, continued to prove useful for continuing to grow, adjust to new skills and power, and improve teamwork and cooperation among various groups, which by now were already acting in unison as if they were all of a singular familia. Alfea, Otter, Musashi, Charles, and Nobunaga in particular were pushing themselves after Belisarius advanced to level 9 alongside Bel, whose growth did the same for younger members of their coalition. I would say they're getting out of hand, but it isn't too bad as of yet. Finn sighed. Some senior members were gathered in a meeting, with all present in Orario for monsterphilia between trips to quest beyond the walls. Gareth laughed, used to his captain's worrying. Tainty, something to fuss o'er, Finn. They stick to the guidelines and things shall go good as they can. Aze admitted she rushed to the 72nd floor ahead of the others, right after she heard Bel grew to level 9. Riveria deadpanned at the dwarf. He shrugged sheepishly. It isn't as bad as when she was younger, but she does have a renewed fire lit under her. The others, too, Finn noted, will just need to take the good as it comes, and stay strict when they act out of line. We don't need strength enough for them to take such risks. Well, as long as I'm not crafting, I can at least accompany any in a group wishing to go below for training. Aiden said, if we can deploy someone at 8 or above, it should mitigate as much risk as possible. Unfortunately, Bel won't be available for diving into the dungeon for some time still. Why is that? We already guessed it has something to do with his recent growth to level 9? Finn asked, digging for info, but was quickly shut down. Sorry, but we've been banned by Hestia from speaking about it. The man's statement shocked the rest present, aside from Alfea. Even with our alliance? We've already disclosed our fauna to each other, and he even demonstrated his growth skill. What could warrant withholding information at this point? Riveria pondered, more to herself than for answers. Once we have a proper grasp of the issue, I doubt it will be kept secret, but our goddess has made her stance on the matter clear for now. He sighed. That aside, I did have an announcement for everyone. Our contact in Altina, who has been helping with inventions for our quest, has agreed to come to live in Orario to aid us directly. Finn perked up, asking, you mean Orphan? Is there a particular reason she decided to come to Orario? Well, I think she wanted to from the start, but didn't want to leave her familia. Seems she finally convinced her god Oceanus to make their new familia home here. He only did it if I agreed to provide them adequate housing, but that wasn't difficult to arrange thanks to Goidmiu familia. That's why their captain was in such a good mood the other day. Thanks to you, they've been rolling in Valis lately, building that fort in the Under Paradise and doing the work for Rivera, and now a new home for a familia? Careful they don't start to see you as a golden goose. Finn chuckled. It was a worthy reason. Having Orphan here eliminates any delays in communication, and she'll have instant access to any material she needs, with her familia to aid her. They are meant to arrive in time to experience this coming monsterphilia, so I suggest arranging a detail to properly welcome them. However, I'm not up to covering the proper decorum for something like that, so I'll leave it to you. Finn accepting his task, Finn nodded, and the meeting was quickly adjourned after confirming the details of the next group to go on a quest to slay the next Harbinger, Aldebaran. He might have been banned from the dungeon for now, but Belle could still go beyond the walls to confront other challenges. Are you sure it would still be good for Belle to be part of the group fighting it? Riveria asked, following Aiden and Alfea. If he's grown to level 9, it doesn't seem like he would get as much from the battle as others. Normally, I'd agree. In this case though, I'm having Belle go, partly as insurance against any Evelys interference, and partly to let him have some way of getting quality Excelia while he can't use the dungeon. We kept the size of the group small, so it should be fine if they stick to the plan we laid out, tracking the conversation quietly. Alfea came up with an idea to rectify something from earlier that day. Excusing herself to the other woman, she pulled Aiden to the side and whispered to him, so quietly she knew the elf would not overhear. Pulling back with some surprise, Aiden muttered, "Never do things by halves, do you, woman?" Starting to wonder what your endgame is going to be with all of this. I'm no schemer, you can take it on face value. Of course, he smiled. Turning back to Riveria, Alfea properly excused herself and left, to return home, though Aiden remained. Have you any further plans for the day, Riveria? Caught a bit off guard, Riveria took a moment to answer. Well, not in particular. I wasn't sure how long our meeting would take, so I didn't plan anything until our familia dinner. That's good, then take a walk with me. I wished to speak with you privately, and now is as good a time as any. Oh, of course I wouldn't mind that, she smiled, stepping to accompany the man. So what did you wish to speak of? Things have been progressing well with the mission, but even for something as important as that, maybe even especially because of its import, we ought to break from constantly mulling over it, HM? I do agree, but then, how are your juniors at Loki Familia doing? I mean, with everything that's happened since. You know, Riveria sighed. Yes, I know. Honestly, it's hard to complain, since I've been gently pushing Ace to build a better relationship with him since I first heard of him from her. Even now, she is in a better state of mind than ever. Recent recklessness aside, it isn't the desperate motivation she had when she was a child. She simply doesn't want Belle to leave her behind. Yes, and she recognizes his power and desire for her to grow stronger with him. I think it's possibly the thing about him that attracts her the most, aside from his looks and the hair. She laughed quietly. Yes, aside from those. Not just Days either, but Tiona has also shown the recent developments to be beneficial to her. Even Lafia. Riveria paused before continuing, hard as it is for me to believe, is more level headed than before. It's as though she no longer feels the need to prove herself. It only makes sense to me. The situation would lead to stronger bonds, greater understanding, and improvement among those involved in their bearing. I didn't think it would be so simple. Riveria frowned at him. It would make more sense to me that this whole arrangement would cause nothing but discord among them all, that relies entirely on Belle and the girls involved. Aiden nodded. If Belle was only seeking after the thrill and pleasure of it, while each lady thought for him to pursue her solely in devoted romance, it would surely lead to chaos and enmity. Belle's honesty and their understanding is what leads to the improvements we've noticed. It isn't just your familia, but ours, and others, too, I think. I can't speak to the extent, but as long as that communication remains clear, it seems like Noah will come of it. Well, it isn't like it's unheard of, but it is unusual for a group like that to remain harmonious. Riveria spoke quietly, growing a bit embarrassed. Life isn't a novel, after all. You mean a harem, Riveria? I'd not think you to indulge in such stories. Red shot down her ears as her eyes widened, but Riveria kept her voice steady. I don't seek them out, but I do relax with fictional stories from time to time. But even in our real world, they rarely go smoothly. I remember the intrigue involved with Zald's lovers, and that sometimes it could get rather violent. And, if I may say, rather petty. Amen, true enough. One of his flaws was seeing how far each would be willing to go for him. Almost as if they had to earn his affection, though he didn't actually see it that way. Aiden agreed. Plucking up her courage, Riveria chanced to ask, "What about yourself? You told me you were married once, before you received the Falna. Yes, I was. After becoming an adventurer, I didn't pursue such relationships for a long time. I was turned away from the idea by their deaths, as well as receiving the longevity skill. I knew it would foretell issues with forming a bond with any but perhaps a blessed elf. He noticed Riveria's ears continued to burn red, though you must understand that at that time, elves were much more private and set apart from other races. Mingling was strictly professional, and half-elves were nigh unheard of. I have learned that was the case. She nodded. But you speak as if things have changed? Spending as much time below as I did with Alfea turned my mind. There was almost something poetic about how she felt the press of her limited time upon her, and I who have all but ignored time since I left Osiris Familia. Riveria seemed let down by the revelation, but in a way she also appeared to have predicted the answer beforehand. Then you and she? Yes, but it's not the same as my wife, you know. I would imagine things would be different, she murmured, confused. No, I mean. Well, Alfea is different, but not in the way you might expect. To that point, her difference has changed me. That is the natural course of things, is it not? How to say it? Alfea and I do love each other, but like with Belle, there are others I have come to love, and this is something she accepts, indeed, something she encourages now. Riveria turned her shocked expression to him as they walked, and he continued, I believe she has intuited my concerns with her mortality, and having to relive what happened with my family so long ago. In any case, she has made it clear that she wants me to be honest with my feelings in totality. My love for her truly could not grow any more. To think, she started, that such a reserved woman as she would have that sort of disposition in her romance. Riveria reflected on her thoughts and feelings for the woman, understanding this unknown complexity. They had walked at that point to a rather charming area of the adventurer's graveyard, covered in expensive memorials and landscaping among the long-past figures of the city's history. To that end, he placed his hand on her nearest shoulder, prompting her to look at him. Would you accompany me to Monsterphilia? The Wait, Riveria cleared her throat. Taking a moment to compose herself, are you asking me as a romantic outing? I believe Belle and the other young ones call it a date, and yes, a date? That sounds. I mean, at our age? Would you rather I invite you to my bed first? He teased, smiling as she blushed across her whole face. I only jest. I would like to accompany you, Riveria, mostly because I have grown to admire you greatly. You're a fine woman, and it is my wish to court you. Swallowing, she replied, what of the entirety of the elven race? You realize what your wish would entail in that regard? I only care about your own answer, not theirs. Besides, at the risk of sounding overly confident, what could the whole elven race do to me at this point? She gaped at his audacity. But in her mind, she could see his reasoning. Everyone close to Aiden and the man himself were pretty much beyond what any elf could threaten with the power they had. Their goddesses were always a target, but even if I've left my homeland behind, I haven't shunned my people. I know you still have great love in you for them, Riveria. That's a part of why I admire you. I suspect if you could do so on your own terms, you would likely rule your people greatly in your own time, should you find closure with your part in Loki Familia. Hell, you just might continue with the Familia and rule at the same time. I would never assent to my father's demands to succeed him, she said with finality. Yes, I thought that would be the case. So to answer you, I don't care for how others feel about it, I only care for your own response. Won't you allow me to court you, Riveria, with the intention of living the rest of our lives side by side? The composed elf was quickly becoming not so long past the point of being flustered, so she took a moment to muster her response, looking him in the eye from her downturned face. It would please me to have you court me, Aiden. To understand, your consideration for me already validates my own feelings for you. She averted her eyes, no longer able to speak and keep her voice from wavering. She felt her hand taken up, and turned her gaze back to it as Aiden pulled it up to his lips as he leaned down to place a kiss on her knuckles. Your answer lights in me a happiness beyond the joy of the sunflowers at dawn. Let it be that I reflect that happiness back upon you more fully than even the moon upon still waters. After having his feelings returned, Aiden was in an unimpeachably good mood, returning home only after stopping by the guild to greet Rose in a very overtly romantic manner. The werewolf flustered a great deal after he kissed her in front of her colleagues, leaving with only a wink and herself to give explanation. He relished in wondering how she would respond when she next got him alone. But that would have to wait until later. Arriving at Heathfire Manor, he found Althea quickly and picked her up, twirling around with a wide smile on his face. After the whirl of movement, he set her down and his good mood had clearly infected her, too. Can I guess you've gotten a good answer? What could have given me away? She moved forward, planting a kiss on his lips. Now, that's the first part, you still have the second before you will have repaid me for this morning walking away. She gestured for him to follow with a finger before turning around and heading inside. Monsterphilia had grown to a much greater event than it had even been when Belle first came to Orario, when it was already a city-wide celebration. Still having a great festive atmosphere, the city now had a new set of attractions to go with the classical events. Belle's eyes went wide as he saw several Xenos performing a dance in the middle of the Colosseum, cheering them on as they rendered an impressive show. Lily, Haruheim, Aze, Tiona, Ryu, and Lafia accompanied him, showing similar enthusiasm for the performance. What pleased Belle most of all, though, was that most everyone in the crowd seemed to be of the same mind as them. They weren't cheering alone, but with the entire audience. Thank goodness Ganesha Familia and the Xeno's own efforts haven't gone to waste, Haruheim said quietly, Belle nodding along with her. Yeah, though it seems like only the most human-looking Xenos are readily accepted. He noticed that few of the more monstrous Xenos were part of the proceedings. Beyond a small number of quadrupedal ones, most present were less threatening in appearance. It makes sense, Lily said gently, one step at a time, Master Belle, at least the others can live much more comfortably on the 18th floor now. Not that all of them take advantage of it, he grumbled, thinking to how Asterius had spent the majority of his time as usual, training deep in the dungeon. Are you feeling jealous of your rival, Argo? Tiona teased, yet stroked his hair in a comforting manner. Don't worry. You're gonna go with the guys to get the next Harbinger thingy. You'll do great. Thanks. Tiona. Belle didn't even deny his feelings on the matter, being discerned by her so easily. I don't want to take it lightly, but I'm a little worried I won't grow much outside the dungeon. I think you'll grow quickly no matter the situation. Aze commented, it's just how you are, indeed, and who knows? With your new skill, we might see a boost to even that, Ryu said, squeezing his hand. He responded in kind with appreciation. Meanwhile, a pair was going about the festival boldly, and attracting a great deal of attention. Can't believe I've had to beat away over a dozen already, Aiden commented idly as he swatted a flying elf nearly foaming at his mouth with rabidity. Riveria sighed, having gone past embarrassment and purely into exasperation with her people. I understand seeing me as their princess still, but at this point, it's like they're ignoring my own agency. True, but they aren't in a position to think and act logically. Few people ever are. Aiden spoke with Riveria easily, walking arm in arm with the beautifully dressed elf as she stood out in all her glory, shining yet minimal gold jewelry, and a flowing, dark, green dress reaching to her ankles rendered any who saw her speechless, save the man accompanying her, of course. That circlet looks lovely on you, Riveria. He noticed the item resting on the crown of her head, and the effort she had clearly employed in her attire overall. It was a stark difference to her normal, military-esque clothing, and suited her very well to his mind. Thank you, Aiden, if I can say so. You also look much sharper than I have seen you before, she teased lightly, and he laughed. I appreciate it. We have never seen each other in a properly formal setting in this manner before, so it makes sense, because I don't usually do so. He gestured to himself, showing his own form, dressed well, from his black felt boots up to light brown trousers loosely ruffled below the knee, and form-fitting up to his waist with a smart, dull golden doublet pulled snugly against his body. His sleeves were rolled up nearly to the elbow, with silver bangles on each wrist set to match the silver necklace that hung to his chest. The doublet opened in a V shape at his collar, dipping more than Riveria's dress to reveal his collarbone and let his necklace rest against his bare chest. His full beard and mustache remained, yet was groomed neatly, while a silver band held his long hair back from his forehead, letting the locks fan out around his head like a mane. "They must think you're simply a beau of little substance," she teased him again. "As long as they realize I'm your beau," he shot back. She smiled. "I actually meant to ask you about that. I would know if you don't mind sharing with me whether you are involved with anyone else? Aside from Althea, I mean, yes." Actually, his instant, honest answer nearly made her whip her head at him in an instant. But he continued, "I have reciprocated close feelings with Ms. Rose Fannet, a senior guild advisor." Though he didn't need to specify, Riveria was already familiar with Rose. After all, she was her own advisor. "You actually got through to her?" "I'm impressed." Honestly, she'd always been against such involvement with adventurers, but, as she got older, I came to suspect she was against the idea of romance altogether. Some that have received too many hurts do appear that way, sometimes, even to those who are very perceptive. He agreed, her apprehension isn't groundless. "I've known countless hearts broken by the dungeon throughout my days, even if I was personally numb to it." "Are you saying it's Althea's influence and not yours?" A beat of silence passed before both broke into laughter, easily ignoring the death stares sent their way from both men and women alike. Chapter end notes. Since it might be another little while until the next update, I wanted to make sure to leave anyone waiting some more. This story was made possible by readers like you. Thank you. A.R.H. Undercroft. This would be all for today. Next part coming soon. Are you saying it's Althea's influence and not yours? A beat of silence passed before both broke into laughter, easily ignoring the death stares sent their way from both men and women alike. Chapter end notes. Since it might be another little while until the next update, I wanted to make sure to leave anyone waiting some more. This story was made possible by readers like you. Thank you. A.R.H. Undercroft. This would be all for today. Next part coming soon.